All right. I am so excited because I get to finally interview a friend of mine that I've been wanting to interview for years. You'll find out why here in a moment, but I want to introduce to you Darcy Mclane. Thank you first of all, Darcy, for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina.
Aw, I love it because her and her husband years ago were our Bible study leaders in their home for many years. And so it's so nice to get reacquainted with you, Darcy. And I get to work with your women's group that you just developed here at your place of business, which we'll talk about that as well today too, because I think that's really unique and very cool that I think a lot of businesses should do as well too. But first and foremost, I want to share with you Darcy Mclane. She's the Director of Accounting and Financial Systems for SEMCO Energy Incorporated, right in St. Clair County, Michigan, where I always tell people that's my main home because that's where my junk drawer is in St. Clair County, Michigan. So she holds a master's degree in administration. She's also the Executive Director of Hope Endeavors and Hope Village in Malawi, Africa. And her vision for Hope Endeavor since started in 2004, which is she was on a mission trip to the Philippines. I can't wait to hear that story. Darcy had been completely content living her version of the American dream. She was busy raising three wonderful children and had a career that she enjoyed. On this trip, she came face to face with extreme poverty, and God broke her heart, and she knew she had to do more. So Darcy founded Hope Endeavors in 2005, along with her husband, Rod, and dear friends, Mike and Denise Bruman. So today, Darcy is the executive director, of course you are, of Hope Endeavors and oversees the operations of Hope Village in Malawi, Africa as her hobby on steroids. Hope Endeavors is a 501c3 charitable organization whose mission is to bring hope to those suffering in extreme poverty. We're committed to having children not only survive, but thrive by providing holistic care and sustaining projects that provide hope for the future. We seek to educate, engage, and empower others to make a difference. And I thought this was pretty cool too, because you have an idea of starting a vocational school as well too. So I definitely want to hear more about that. But you also have three married children as well. So would love to hear. So you have grandchildren too. How many grandchildren?
Two right now and two more on the way.
I love it. I
Yes.
love it.
Any
Yeah,
day we're expecting Finley to come and then another in October. So I love being a grandparent.
I know, isn't it the best? I always, when I introduce myself now, I'm like, okay, so my most favorite thing that I do is my grandchildren. So
Yes.
I love them more than my own children. I know that sounds awful, but grandparents understand.
And I think the reason that I say that too, that I love them more than my own children, but I think it gives us an opportunity to relive loving on our kids, and
Yeah.
it's sweeter the second time around.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is sweeter. Yeah, because especially because we can give them away when they're crying too,
Yes.
for the most part, unless we're babysitting and now we're stuck.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, what do we do with them? Somebody help. 1-800-GRANDMA. I'm so excited to interview you, Darcy, and I think I already know what I'm going to call this. I think I'm going to call it Be Hopeful because of your hope endeavors that you have as well too. But before we get started, just want to hear, I love that you said that you were living, quote unquote, the American dream. But then God was like, okay, this is part of your American dream that you have. And I think that's so cool because I do talk to a lot of people across the country about quote unquote the American dream. But I think a lot of Americans have lost touch of what the actual American dream is too, especially our younger generations. They're just like, what's the American dream? Like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? And then,
Sure.
what happened with you in the Philippines? Would love to hear that story.
Yeah. So for myself, I was a young mother. Like you had said, I had three young children at home and I was pursuing a career. that was all part of, I want to call it my American dream, raising a family and having a career, kind of having it both. I was, um, had all my comforts of a nice house, a nice car, nice clothes, pursuing wealth and happiness and all of those things that I call it my American dream. Because like you said, that definition of American dream can be individual, and is changing as the generations change. But I thought that's where I was going to find my happiness. And then I went on it, my very first mission trip to the Philippines, and I had gone with my husband. He had been going for many years, and I was completely content at home. I had no desire to travel halfway around the world and see what he was doing. But when then my kids started going with him, I'm like, geez, I really need to find out what's going on over there. So I went on the first mission trip, and I remember it was a medical missions trip. So we were meeting the needs of meeting the needs medically. And I'm obviously not a medical professional, so couldn't do much there, but I was shampooing a little girl's hair, trying to pick the lice out of her hair. And I was just so overcome and overwhelmed with emotion to think of the contrast between my life in America and the life they experienced on a day-to-day basis, and the life of my children and the things that I could give them compared to what a mother in the Philippines could give to their children. And I knew right then and there I needed to take a minute, and I did. I went for a walk by myself, and I just, prayed about what's happening here. And I knew right then and there that God had broken my heart for the people of the Philippines, and specifically those living in extreme poverty. And I knew that I needed to do more. And I think that's the very moment that God got a grip of my heart and started the vision for Hope Endeavors. It was
So
just
amazing.
shampooing a little girl's hair.
Yeah, there you go. In the hair business here.
There
So
you go,
I
right for
love
you,
that you said that.
Tina.
Yeah. That is so amazing because I think one of the biggest struggles that I find, Darcy, when I am coaching people or doing classes, because I do a lot of workshops, is helping people to find their purpose. And one of the things that I talk about, well, what breaks your heart? Because you're going to find your purpose inside there. And that's exactly what you found, but you also did something about it. So you moved, right? Because passion fuels purpose.
Yes.
And so that's exactly what you did. And so the mere fact that you moved on it and said, okay, I've got to do something. And I feel like once you taste significant, success never satisfies. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter, like you said, how much money you have. I mean, how many people have we met over the years? People, I just want to be happy, just want to be happy. And they think it's money that's
Right,
going to drive them happiness. But it's like, really, what are you going to do with that money?
right,
And talk about the beginning years, because I'm sure you didn't have anybody supporting you financially. You probably
right.
did all the financial support yourself. And I've
Yes,
met a lot of nonprofit founders that are telling me this, Darcy, that I've been coaching nonprofits, and they're like, it's all my money in here. It's,
yes, yes.
I'm not able to get money.
Yeah, so like you said, when we came back from the Philippines, my husband and I did some soul searching, and we're like, okay, let's put our house up for sale. We're going to sell everything we have, and we're going to go to the Philippines. That's what I thought my next step was.
Yeah.
But it turned out that that's really not what I needed to do. Our house didn't sell. So I'm like, okay, great. Now how am I going to pursue this vision that I have for Hope Endeavors if I can't sell my house, and I can't go, and where am I going to get the money? And the needs are so great. But then God kind of showed me a different path. And so we decided that what we would do is we would serve from here. Um, so then we started fundraising like every nonprofit does. But we put a lot of our money into it, and we just began with buying a piece of land in Africa. We had taken a vision trip there. We had seen firsthand the need there, and that's when we knew we needed to go to Africa as well as support the ministries that were in Asia. Um, and so it started with one piece of land, and then we just built a team there. We understood that since we weren't going to be able to be there 365 days of the year, that we needed to build a team. So we started looking for people who had the heart, the passion, um, the character that we needed to develop a strong team there. And today we have 23 Malawian staff members who run Hope Village. I love the internet because it allows us to oversee from overseas. And I take several trips a year there to be able to support the ministry. But getting back to how did it start, it was just, those defining moments. The young girl with lice, and then in Africa it was a young boy named Isaac. We were on our vision trip there, and we'd come across a young boy named Isaac. Now, I don't know if he was 4 or 5, but that's about the age that he was. And he just lost his mother to AIDS, and he had no one or nothing. And I just knew, and there's no safety net there, no support services, no child protective services or anything like that. So I knew then that we had to build a care center for these children who were losing their parents to HIV. So we started with just a piece of land, found a few people who had the same passion, and then you just pour everything into it.
Wow. Okay, this is huge because I think there's a lot of takeaways that you can take from this. And, it starts with being full of hope, full of being hopeful, right? And I think a lot of times people think the American dream, so to speak, or your significance that you're creating, your success, so to speak, right? Your purpose, it just happens all at once. But it's like, no, it started with a piece of land. It started with me having vision and those defining moments. And it's so true because as I look back in my life, I think back of those defining moments that, propelled me into the business I'm in now and the ministries that I support and all of the above. But you said something really, really powerful. You said you started looking for people that had the same heart, passion, and character. And
Mhm.
isn't that just like any business or any nonprofit? Like that's the first step. And so let's back
Don't do
up
it
a little
alone.
bit because I do coach a lot of business owners and they're like, I just can't find people.
Right.
So how did you find these people with the same heart, passion, and
Well,
character? Here's the thing, Darcy, and I want to tell you because the best leaders in the world are people who lead nonprofits because for the most part, you get people to do things for free for you. Okay. Sometimes
yeah,
they're volunteers. So that says a lot about you as a leader versus someone who's a business owner like me. The way I get people to do things is I pay them. So that
exactly.
does say a lot about me. So talk about that. Like, how did you find those people and influence them in that way?
So the first group of people that I felt I needed was a good board. Um, so I looked to two of our dear friends who had served in the Philippines for, at that time, I think it was over 23 years, Mike and Denise Bruman, and we just had them over to our house. We were sitting on the floor in the living room and we just talked about it and we prayed about it, and we knew that um, these two couples, we were going to create the board. So it's just going back through who you've worked alongside, who you've seen live out the character that you want, people who share. So we started with just creating a board, and then that's evolved over the years too, as you add different people to your board.
Mhm.
But then the harder part was creating the team in Malawi. Um, that took a lot longer than just finding our board. Um, we started out with just a few people that we were working alongside. We found people who when we'd go there, we would do Bible camps and stuff, and there's this young man who was our driver. Um, so he drove us from village to village, and he now is our pastor at Hope Village.
Wow.
So, I mean, he just came alongside. We could see, he was the driver, and we'd be doing a Bible camp, and he would be there singing, dancing, along with the kids. And we like, he really has a heart for these children, his occupation was a mechanic and a driver, but I mean, he really has the heart for this type of service. And he came alongside and we've developed him over the years. He's been with us since 2005.
Wow.
Um, and so, it's similar. You just watch people as they come alongside. And I do firmly believe that God provides those people in our lives, um, who will help, who will see, who will join you when you have a need, those people who respond. I remember one time I was there, it was just me, and the care center was relatively new. Um, and we're way out in the village, and this boy walks up, and I want to say 10, 11 years old. He had nothing. His parents had both died. He was traveling from one village to another village. Um, the village he was from was in Malawi. The village he was going to was in Mozambique. But he had no way of getting transport back and forth, and he just showed up on our doorstep. Now, I'm the Mzungu, I'm the white American, so I'm the one who has money. But my staff went to talk to the boy and took care of all of his needs, meaning they got him food, they got him transport, they gave him money, they gave him advice on how to get back from Mozambique to Malawi. And they never even came to me and said, hey, we have this situation. Can you give us some money? They took it out of their own pockets. And that's when you know you've got the right people, when they're invested just as much as you are.
Oh, yeah.
And that made me so proud of my team when they just took care of it. Um, so it's
Yeah.
little things like that, that you look for in people when you're building your team to do this type of work.
I love what you just said. I mean, there's so many things that you just unpacked that just comes naturally for you, Darcy. And I'm like, oh, leadership lesson number one, leadership lesson number two. I'm unpacking all these steps. And I do want to go back to, you said you started with a good board, and that is everything. And I am coaching quite a few nonprofits right now. And that is the one thing that I keep going back to. Like, you don't want to surround yourself, even as, when you think of a management team in a business, so that would be your board, so to speak, right? You don't want to be surrounded with so many yes people, and you've got to have a lot of diversity on that board, of diversity of strengths and talent that's
Right.
on that board, as well as your management team, if you're talking about a business, right?
Yep.
And like you said, it's going to evolve because
Yep.
you're always looking. And something I love about you is you're always looking for that next person. And that's what I've been trying to train my team members, especially our managers, Darcy. And that is to be able to always look for that next person. Like you, from driver to pastor, okay, you were watching this driver and you're like, he seems kind of excited. Right? And that's how I am too. I'll meet somebody and think they seem pretty passionate and pretty excited. I think I'm going to allow them to borrow my belief in them, help
Mhm.
develop them,
I like
because
that.
that's what leaders are.
Yep.
That's what leaders are. They're people who look for that next person all the time. And so if you're not doing that, then you're really doing the company or the nonprofit a disservice. You're not going to grow if you're not always looking. It could be, like you said, your driver. It could be the next Starbucks barista. I don't know.
Exactly.
Someone that works at McDonald's. It could be that person. Always be looking. And can you talk a minute about that too, because I think that's so powerful, and I want to stay on that for a minute. How to always be looking for your next talent, and what advice would you give not only to nonprofit leaders but also business owners for that?
I think a lot of times we as leaders, we tend to try to do everything ourselves. And so
Yeah.
that has been a fight for me to make sure that I don't do that. So I've taken specific proactive steps to say, okay, is there someone else who could do this or should do this? Does it need to be me? Um, and that's my biggest struggle in that area, but that's where you find the most growth and fruit for your team, is when you're giving them those opportunities. In Malawi, we'll be on a project, and I always just have to, even though I'm up front, have to keep my eyes out who's doing what while the activities are going on, who keeps showing up, who has the skills I need. A lot of it is, while it's character and passion, you do sometimes have to look for very specific skills. And I know that in Africa, when I'm there, it's always the next thing. So like if we started a maize mill. So when we started getting into like income generating type activities to be able to support the ministry without all funds that are generated through fundraising, I needed to find someone who had entrepreneurial skills because we needed to figure out how are we going to support this. And so I just start watching, okay, we're going to start this project. Who's got what ideas? And sure enough, we found a young man who had that skill set, who was interested in developing IGAs, who had a passion for children. So he fit right into the vision of wanting to provide hope and bring hope to the next generation in Malawi. Yet he had the business acumen and the entrepreneurial skills to help us start a maize mill and a poultry farm. And
Wow.
so you just keep your eye out that as you're going through, look for individuals who have not just the passion, but also you need specific skill sets too.
I love that you said that. Keep your eyes open, right? Because
Yeah.
the people could be right in front of you. And I think we've had this mistake of just constantly resorting to, posting on Craigslist, or we have a new thing called Applicant Pro, and it's
Yeah.
just like we're just waiting for those resumes to come in. We're waiting for social media to bring the right people in. But I'm like, you guys, the people are right in front of you. They're right in front of you. They could be a future professional that's graduating from our school, which if you look at my team, Darcy, and you see the core of my team, it's graduates. It's
Yeah.
people that I
Perfect.
single-handedly chose. And so my goal is to help them to single-handedly choose because I'm not in these companies like I used to be, right? And so I love this so much. And the fact that you also talked about you're looking for people invested just as much you are. And it's so true. People always say to me, Tina, how do I, get a promotion in my company? You know what I mean? It's like the fact that you had to ask me that makes me wonder about you, first of all. Um, but like what's your motive, first of all?
Right.
And so one of the things I always just tell people, like, just add value to
Um,
everyone around you, the people that work for you, with you, and how can your number one job should always be to make your boss look good. Same goes in a church. It's being under that authority and the importance and also coming alongside their vision. Like, hey, I have an idea. Like one of my number one players in my companies, I would share a vision and then he would say, can you tell me more about that? And then he would be like, I know exactly how to help you with this. And I'm like, okay, this is my next COO in my company because all he was doing was trying to figure out how to make my dreams come true. And
nice.
that's what happens. Like, and we always say in our company, Darcy, your number one job is to make your boss look good. And that really is biblical,
Mhm.
right? It's really biblical. I mean, even David did it for Saul, and Saul
Yeah.
was a terrible leader, but he still did it. And God said, this is a man after my heart because he's doing this for me and he understands the protocol here, so to speak, right?
So true.
Understanding. Can you talk more about, because I think a lot of people don't talk about this enough. Invested just as much you are. Like are you betting on yourself? And what does that look like when you're looking for that next person to be in your inner circle, if you will, whether it's in the company that you work with now, in America or your nonprofit?
Okay, so I'll share a little story about a specific example of how this came about. So obviously, when you start your own business or your own nonprofit, you're very invested. And for me, that meant I was a little bit of a control freak. So one of the things that I find difficult to do because I do have a full-time job here in the US and Hope Endeavors is my hobby on steroids, is leading teams of people over to Malawi so that they can go and see and serve and then join. Um, for me to do all those teams on my own is not practical.
Right.
So on one of my trips that I had taken a team from California, and I was watching every team member who was on that team to see how they reacted to the challenges that they saw, how they responded to my leadership. Um,
Yes.
while each team has their own team leader, how are they going to respond to me as the leader at Hope Village? Um, and I came across one of the pastor who was on the team, and conversation after conversation, watched how he dealt with his team, watched how he interacted with my team, watched how he interacted with the children. And at the end of that trip, I was able to say to him, okay, you, you can lead teams for me. It's just, you have to you have to be able to give up the little bit of the control freak, but at the same time, you have to make sure that there's that kindred spirit, or that, I needed to know that he understood how much Hope Village meant to me, and
Mm,
that the things that they do with it could harm or help. And and it was important to me to know the character of that person, that they would be able to work well with each other. And I think that's how I have to do it, is I have to work alongside with you, side of you, and see how you respond to things, um, and then build upon that.
yeah. Oh my gosh. It's called the great handoff. And how do
Yeah.
you do a great handoff? And this is so, so good. And I'm so glad you're talking about this, because I was just coaching a bunch of Paul Mitchell school leaders yesterday on this, and we're going to spend more time on it next month. And it is about who else should be doing this, because literally what I have found, survey after survey, that leaders are doing way too much. And
Sure.
really, we should only be doing 5% of what we're actually doing. And so we should be handing off the rest of it and training people to take the rest of it. So it's the great handoff. And like, who do you turn it over to? And I watch a lot of my leaders, Darcy, and I'm sure you've seen this too, and you've probably seen it in yourself too, because you're very capable. I'm lucky because I'm not capable of a lot of stuff, so it's easy to delegate.
Oh, stop
So,
that, Tina.
so this is why it comes so easy for me to delegate. But what happens is I hire really capable team members, and then what happens is they can't hand off. But what I'm watching is they're not working alongside them and
Mhm.
sharing that vision, like you said, over and over and over and over. Great point is I'm actually trying to hand off fundraising. We do a lot of fundraising in our businesses to a new person. And I'm like, I'm going to stay by her side until she truly understands the vision and truly so clear, like it's such clear expectations. And I will not like just hand it off. And
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people think that's micromanaging, but to me, it's not. To me,
right.
it's a great handoff. It's really setting a clear expectation, and it's loving to
Yeah.
do for a
I
team.
love that you had a name for it. I didn't know there was a thing called the Great Handoff
I
until
made it up. I
you.
just made it
Awesome.
up.
But I love it because I always thought, well, I'm just a control freak and I'm having difficulty doing this. I knew the importance of it, um, but if you don't do that, you won't grow. You'll end up trying to do all the tasks that other people can do for you, and the things you need to focus on, you won't be able to. And since I've been able to, like, I'm an I'm a financial person. And so I used to try to do all the finances myself. Well, that was very difficult. I had to find somebody in Malawi who could do the finances. So, like I said, same with the team leads. It's just you go through it with them, you stay with them side by side, and you make sure that they know if they have a problem, they can come to me, but then you got to release it, you know? And so I
So
like that you call it the great handoff.
yeah.
I'm gonna take that one.
And I love the fact that you said that you can't grow. And people might be thinking, well, I don't really want to grow. But I'm like, wait, you want to create more significance?
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Do you want to create a legacy? Yes, you do. We all do, right? If you're human, you want to do that. And that's the best way to do that, is to multiply leaders. And you do that by empowering. I think of it as handing off the baton. You don't just throw the baton at someone on a relay race, like you're handing it to them,
Yeah,
and you're kind of running for a second with them too while they're running, right?
yeah.
And so this is so good. Wow, I could go for hours with you, Darcy. You're one of the greatest leaders I've ever seen. I don't think you realize it, how much you are, how much it comes natural. One of the things that I love is that you call it Hope Endeavors, and I want to know where that came from, right? And you got Hope Village. Where did that name come from? Because this series is called Be Hopeful, and we're going to end this out with why you need to be hopeful, whatever you're in right now,
Yeah.
to be able to get to your significance.
Well, the hope comes from, for Hope Endeavors, the hope that we have in Christ. That one day um, we will be in eternal life with heaven, in heaven with our Lord. So that's what our hope is in. It's in Christ Jesus. The endeavors part comes from the work, the mission that we're doing to alleviate extreme poverty. So that's kind of where it came from. And there's a scripture verse in Revelations that talks about until there are no more tears, that God will wipe away all of our tears. So that's kind of what Hope Endeavors is doing. We're on a mission to bring hope until there's no more tears. Um, and so that's kind of where that came from back in the day.
Wow. I love that. And I'm sure you probably share that vision and the reason quite often. If you're like me, it's so funny because I love meeting brand new people in my company, and I love meeting brand new students because I get to go back to the foundation. And how important is that, right? To just
Yeah,
reinstill hope within your heart, because
yeah,
you can get so bogged down in the day-to-day tasks. And I've seen
yeah.
this happen with a lot of business owners, Darcy. They get so bogged down that they forgot why they got into that business or that nonprofit in the first place. How do you get back to that foundation on a continual basis? What do you do to stay there?
It is very, very easy to get all bogged down in everything that is going on. And
Yeah.
for me, because I'm distant, I mean, the best is to go on a trip and just start hugging on those kids, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that just brings me all sorts of joy and reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing. But in the meantime, when I'm here in the US and I'm doing my real job that I have to do so I can can pay for the ministry over there, um, I have to keep in contact with the children. Like I said, the internet has saved me. I have kids who have grown up through our programs who will send me a message on Facebook or instant messenger, just say, "Hey, mom, how you doing?" And to have a child who um, started with you at age 5 and now is in high school, or just to reach out and say, "Hey, mom, how you doing?" They miss me, and just to keep that contact with them and to see how they've grown. I've seen kids who came very, very ill with HIV and didn't have much hope for a future that they could even survive, and now they're thriving. We've had kids who've become auto mechanics and tailors and seamstress and caregivers, and um, I'm waiting for the day that I get to employ um, one of my children from the care center. So that keeps me going. Um, but I think it's just keeping contact with the real reason we're there, and that seeing those changed lives keeps me going.
I love that, Darcy, because not only for a nonprofit, but a business too, you've got to stay in the trenches and you got to get out of the office, because
Yeah.
leadership is not an office job. And you and I were talking about this, how you get so bogged down in meeting after meeting after meeting, and financials after financials. And I have to intentionally do that. And so I'll actually create positions for myself in my own company that I can be in front of the students, right? Because I've got myself out of a job. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do something new, and I'm gonna start meeting with phase 2 students. And so I'll do that so I can get in front of them and hear their stories. And I think if you don't do that, you'll lose your why that you got into the business or the nonprofit in the first place, like you said. And so I think that's so, and I love that you said that, just keep in contact with them and hugging on them. Like as a business leader as well, we've got to stay hugging on our people and
Yeah.
stay in contact with our people, like our reasoning for getting behind it. Because leadership really is a sacred responsibility. So as we start to end this out, Darcy, how can a leader stay hopeful? What advice do you give to be hopeful?
Oh, wow. I think I think a lot of that motivation that you need to kind of keep keep refreshing in yourself to stay hopeful is just to remember why you were there in the first place. Take the time to reflect on
Mm,
where you've been and where you've come and where you're going. Sometimes we get so busy that we lose sight of all of that. And just to take that time to self-reflect and say, um, this is why I started. This is where I was. Here's the blessings that have come along the side. Here's the things that have been true and faithful in my life. Here's what's going to be true and faithful um, in the next 10 years. So take that time to self-reflect and remind yourself where that hope comes from,
yeah.
um, to keep yourself motivated and moving forward.
Huge. This is so good. And I do want to also end this out with a couple things. One is I think this is amazing what you're doing, Darcy. So as a leader in your corporation that you're working for, you started a women's networking program, leadership program, and I get to be one of your first speakers, and I'm super
Yes, you are.
excited about that. And tell other business owners why they need to do something like this. I think this is huge.
Awesome. So yes, we are so excited that the company has come and supporting us in developing our first women's leadership network, is what we're calling it. It gives women in our organization an opportunity to come together and network with one another, to encourage one another, to gain professional development, um, learn from great leaders. And when I was given this opportunity to start, the first person I thought of to come and speak at it was Tina, and she
Oh,
gracefully accepted to come. Our kickoff is going to be in a couple weeks here, and we're so excited to have Tina come alongside our women and help us get our leadership on. Um,
yeah.
so super looking forward to it. It's so important that
Mm,
we give women the skills, the aptitude, the space, that we help each other. So many times women can be a little catty and not supportive of other women. This is an opportunity for us to come alongside and support each other, because we do hold up half the sky, you know.
yeah, we sure do. I love that. This is huge. I think every business needs to do this, and it's not something that's mandatory.
No?
So it's going to be so fun to be able to watch who actually shows up, who invests in themselves, so to speak, of the
Yep.
time to
Yeah.
spend to grow themselves, right? And so it was very interesting because I saw a statistic that only about 3% of people actually invest in themselves. So the people listening to this podcast are already in that 3% because they're investing in themselves, right? And so it's getting other people to invest in
Right.
themselves, which is
Wonderful.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm so proud of you, Darcy, that you're such a visionary, and that's what leaders are, right? They're visionaries. And so that's just absolutely huge. And lastly, one of your projects that you're working on is building a trade school for your nonprofit. Talk a little bit about that, and how can people sow into your ministry as well?
Sure. Sure. Our next big endeavor that we're having at Hope Village is to start a vocational school. As I kind of mentioned, you know, we've had children growing up from the preschool age up into high school, and now we're to the point um, where they're thriving, and we need to make sure that they have the skills that they need to continue that. So this vocational school will be right at Hope Village on our property. We're going to start with 3 programs. We're going to have plumbing, construction, and tailoring, and people from not just Hope Village, but also from the surrounding community and villages will be able to come and be taught those trades so that they can have productive lives moving forward. It's just one of the things that I've seen every step of the way. It's like, as you do one thing, you'll see what the next thing needs to be. And if you're just have your eyes open and are faithful to it, it's kind of like build it and they will come, right? Um, so that's why we're so excited to start this vocational school, is to give the next generation the skills that they need to be hopeful for their futures.
I love it. How can people sew into your ministry? What's the best way to get a hold of?
Um, there's 3 ways. Facebook, Hope Endeavors has a Facebook page that we try to keep updated with what's going on there. We also have a website. It's called hopeendeavors.com. And then you can also reach out directly to myself, and that's Darcy.McLane at hopeendeavors.com.
I love it, girl. You are so awesome. One last piece of advice that you've been wanting to tell people for a long time to stay hopeful.
Oh, to stay hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. So take the time to self-reflect,
Yeah.
meditate, pray, keep that area of calm and space so that you can focus on the hopeful things in your life. When everything else bombards you, take that time to meditate on what really brings hope.
Amen, girl. You are awesome. This was great, great.
Thank I just want to say thank you, Tina, for all the years of friendship and being able to watch you grow as a leader, and the amazing things that you have done. I'm so honored that you're going to come and speak at our first Women's Leadership Network. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to continuing our journey together.
You too, Darcy. I love you so much. I can't wait. Take care.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.